Okay, hello, hello. Welcome in. Find your seats, gather around. Get started in just a couple minutes here, once everybody has a chance to get situated. Let us know where you're from in the chat. It's always great to see the global community that is Zeplin. We have over 5 million users from all over the world. So usually when we do these webinars, we get people from Asia, from the US, from Europe. So let us know where you're from. It's always great to see and always interesting to see too where you're from. Just some Zoom logistics. If you have questions, make sure to put them in the Q&A section as opposed to the chat. We'll be answering questions in the Q&A, but not in the chat, just to make things a little more organized. And some of my friends from Zeplin will be answering them. So if you have questions while I'm demoing, put them in the Q&A. Great. And it looks like, yeah, we have people from all over the world here. Fantastic. Very nice. Okay, great. So let's get started. My name is Mike from the community team, the community crew at Zeplin. Basically, what I do is I talk to teams who are pro users of Zeplin. I learn their stories, and then I end up sharing those stories with the rest of the Zeplin community, the Zeplin users. So I do sessions like these, but a lot of what I do is finding those pro users, those tips and tricks that people do, and then I share them with all of you. So if you have interesting workflows, or you think you're a power user, then let me know. And maybe next time you and I will be doing the video up here together. We also have a Discord. I'd recommend you joining it. That's where we talk about all things community, and you can get a lot of tips and tricks from your peers at Zeplin. Okay, fantastic. So today is onboarding part 2. In part 1, we talked about how to organize your design file into these handy workspace sections with all the links of your items. We talked about organizing screens into the sections. We talked about screen variants that can declutter your design tool and easily communicate screen states to your team, and a couple of other items too. Today, we're going to talk about flows in Zeplin, how they're a bit easier to create than your design tool, to share, to organize. And we're also going to talk about your design system and how you can create a design system in Zeplin called a style guide. Finally, we'll look at components in Zeplin, and if we have time, maybe some other pieces like connecting Jira. But let's get started here. So we'll start off with flows. Basically, at Zeplin, we were getting all this feedback about how flows and design tools, or flows in general, are just difficult and time-consuming to create. So for example, if you're creating flows in the most manual way, you might be using something like the pen tool here to create a connector. From there, you might change the thickness, make it a line, change the color. And there you go, you have your arrow. This one is kind of obstructing this entire screen here. So after that, you might do something like creating a section and actually labeling what these screens do. So maybe this is my market piece of my application. And then I might just add a tiny little description. Okay, just like so. We'll make that just a little smaller. So that's great. We created a connector. We added some information to document our user flow. And then finally, we can say, organize it. There we go. So not too bad, right? I think if you have lots of screens, if you're manually creating connectors, that can be a big burden for you. Or if you have lots of these sections, right, then naming them and describing them, and even putting these different screens into groups. If you have lots of groups, this can be very time consuming for you, right? And the piece that I want to call out too is creating it is difficult, but maintaining it is even more difficult. So say if this screen moves around, well then boom, your connector is broken. Or if you want to update your descriptions, or maybe if you want to say, add a screen, then you have to go ahead and mess around with your organization, right? Great. So basically, creating is time consuming, but maintaining flows, user flows, and design tools is even more time consuming. And so we'd heard these problems about user flows, and we wanted to solve them. So let's check out what user flows looks like in Zeplin. I'm actually going to export some screens here. So still in Figma, here we have some screens. Going to go ahead and just move those over to Zeplin. Like so. And I'll actually show you what the export process looks like here. We'll select our workspace and we can select our project and we can export. Great. So there we go. There's some of the screens that we added. I'll just move them into our market section and beautifully and nicely organized. Cool. So we're in the dashboard view right now, which is all the screens in Zeplin. You can see them organized here, and we can see all the different sections. You might notice that there's also this flows tab, and that's what we're going to be working in. We can add a single screen to a flow by right-clicking it, or we can add all the screens in a section by clicking this icon here. There we go. And we can actually then go to our flow and we can find those screens. The thing I want to note right here is that these screens, they come in the same orientation as my design tool. So if you have them in your design tool laid out in the happy path, like so, Zeplin will actually recognize that and lay them out in flows in the exact same way. I'm just going to create some copies here. Whoops. And I'm going to spread them out. And you can even change the variant from this screen too. If you're unfamiliar with variants, it's basically just screen states. Cool. So let's create some connectors. When I was hovering over the screens, you might have noticed that these blue points are popping up. I can select these on the side or any kind of point on the side. I just drag and boom, create my connector there. And I can do the same here. And you can see that the connectors are automatically snapping to the sides of screens, so I don't have to, kind of mess around with the connector and make sure that's the right length. And I can even create connectors from individual layers. Great. So what about if I have a different kind of interaction between screens? So it's not the happy path here that leads to my delicious baklava, but maybe it's an error state or a no result state. How do we communicate that? Well, you can create a connector and you can change the color. You can also change it to a dashed line, and you can document this connector. So maybe this is our no results connector. Boom, there we go. I can add that label. And I can also add floating labels. So maybe there's a special type of interaction on the screen, like the hand waves when we click it. Boom, there we go. So that's connectors, and that's creating them and customizing them and adding labels to document them. And you can see that this is a lot more efficient, a lot faster than creating flows in your design tool. And even if you're using, something like a third-party tool or maybe a plugin, those features of those pieces, they're disconnected from the handoff process and might not be as high fidelity as Zeplin. All right, so organization. I can create groups from screens, and you might have noticed some on the left-hand side here. So we're just going to Command G, and we're going to create a market group. And the best thing here is that if we move our screens around, not only does the group not break, but the connectors don't break either. And then adding and deleting screens is simple in groups as well. If you want to share a specific piece of a flow, you can click this little link icon, and you can copy a web link or an app URI to that specific group and share it with your teammates. When they get that link and they click it, they'll be navigated to that specific group, and we'll be able to just see that in the flow. So when flows get really big, it can be very confusing for not only designers, but other people on your team like devs or PMs to understand the flow. And that's why you create subflows or groups. And so you can just send that link to one group and just focus your team on that one piece. Another thing I want to call out about flows is that we support all these complex use cases. So you might have noticed here that beyond labels, you can also add shapes to your flows. And so here we have a diamond shape, and this can be used for a conditional statement or something that is breaking up your users. So here we have a payment application, and if they have credits in their account, then they go to the finished or processing screen. And if they don't have credits, then they're asked to pay via Apple Pay. So that's a diamond. We can also add rectangles. And usually this is for things that are outside the application. So for example, sending an invoice that is maybe just sent through an email that doesn't actually happen in your app, but is still important for the flow. That's what rectangles are used for. And finally, we have the pill shape. So usually a start or an end to the flow is what people use the pill shape for. And all of these are customizable. So this is just a rectangle here that's being used to tell everybody in the flow that, hey, this is a screen that's going to be designed, but it hasn't been yet. So shapes are customizable in that way, color, size, and shape. And you can add them through shortcuts like R, P, or D for diamond. Or you can click the icons below here. Great. So flows. We went over creating flows, connectors, customizing connectors, labels, grouping them, sharing them, and then having these complex flows with shapes. I also want to mention boards. So when your flows get really, really big, you can use boards that will break up your flows into their constituent parts. So it's just another level of organization there. The last thing I want to show for flows is when you click into an individual screen, on the left and on the right-hand side, you get the connector information that we were seeing earlier that we created. So here we get that this is a dashed line and it's yellow. Not only that, but we've included the label. So I instantly know that this connector going to my no result is a no results connector, which, you know, sounds obvious, but in different use cases can be more complicated. So I can see where this screen is leaving to and what screens are coming to this screen as well. Great. So that's flows. Let me know if you have any questions for flows. We can check them out. Okay, now on to style guides. Style guides in Zeplin are basically the merging of your UI kit and your design tool and your coded components in development. And not only that, but Zeplin is providing a single place for everybody on your team to access those colors, those textiles, spacing, and your components. So one of the issues that we hear about a lot is that you know, UI kits in your design tool are great, but the problem is that they're not accessible to everybody. So they're kind of siloed or hidden, and people might not know where those UI kits are. So what you can do is you can export into Zeplin. I'll show you what that looks like again. Just export some buttons here. And we'll choose the same app. Okay, fantastic. And before we look at the style guide, I just want to mention there's two concepts of style guides in Zeplin. There's global style guides, and basically these can be applied to multiple projects. So one style guide could be applied to, say, 3 projects. And then there's local style guides, which live within a project. I would recommend using global style guides so you can create them and share with multiple projects. Oftentimes crcolors, components, and textiles, they're used across, you know, iOS, Android, web, and there's a lot of crossover. So I would suggest using global style guides. I'm just going to show you what a local style guide looks like really quickly. So We're in dashboard here. We're in flows. And now we're going to go into the style guide. You can see here that the style guide is that repo for my colors, my textiles, spacing, and components. And Zeplin has detected some colors that were defined in my file. I'm going to go ahead and just add all of those. And I'm going to do the same with my textiles. Boom. So I've added all my named colors, all my named textiles, and I'm actually going to add a spacing token. I'm going to make this one 43. I'm going to change the color to this orange. And finally, I have all of my components. So here are some of the buttons and all the other pieces that we exported. To organize these quickly, what I like to do is I like to search a term that is common to all of those components that I exported, and then I just create a section from them really quickly. 2 T's. And I can even do the same for these icons here. So it's just an easy way to quickly organize your design system in Zeplin. I want to take another look at this button section here. And you might have noticed that we have this special icon. And this is what's called creating component variants. Component variants, basically in development, multiple buttons in design will be one button in development with different properties. So say a press state or a selected, default, primary, secondary. And adding these as a component variants allows you to communicate that to your team. So boom, there we go. We can see that we have some types, some properties, and some states. And I can even toggle these to find a particular button. Not only that, but if they're already set as variants, say in Figma, then we automatically export them into Zeplin as such. Save you a little bit of time. And we're going to see how this looks different on a screen when we are inspecting components. So that's just a quick overview about style guides. When you're exporting your components, I like to search for them and quickly create sections. You can automatically export component variants if you're using Figma, or if you're using Adobe XD or a Sketch, you can export your components into Zeplin. And through the naming conventions, we can kind of guess the types or the properties or the states, save you some work there. So the last thing I want to mention about style guides before we start inspecting some screens is that all these named colors, all these textiles, my spacing tokens, and my components that we defined in this style guide will show up on our screens. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I'm going to go to this screen here. So this is the power of style guides, is that you can apply all those elements which are common to all your different projects, all your different apps, across everything you're working on, and get all that named information instantly. So here I see this blue header. That makes me know that this is a component. Not only that, but it's a component variant. If I click this little icon, I can actually pop out this component. I can toggle the state. And as a dev, I can see the different properties of this button. So maybe this button is new to me, then I can see all the different ways that, or all the different properties that I need to create, and I can just go ahead and develop them. So it gives me all the information I need to build this button. Not only that, but when we hover over different elements, we're also seeing our spacing token pop up here as our spacing XXL. And we have other information like our typeface that was named and our color that was named too. Great. So that's design systems in Zeplin as style guides. I know we're coming up on time here, so I want to be quick about components. and how it's different in the screen view. So when you're inspecting, say, in a design tool, one of the most difficult things as a dev is to understand on a screen what is and what isn't a component. And it's important because as a dev, I want to be as quick as possible when I'm developing this screen. And knowing what's a component, what I've already built, what is a building block of the screen can help me build it much quicker because I can just go grab it and put it into my project. The problem that we've heard today in design tools is that you kind of have to click around a bunch to find what is and what isn't a component, or you have to hover. So it's this kind of Where's Waldo game or clickorama, where you're just clicking around a bunch to find what is and what isn't a component. And even then, it's not very clear, and you might not have access to the files that you need. So in Zeplin, we wanted to solve that component visibility. And what we came up with was showing all the components on your screen. And so boom, I just click show all components, and instantly I can see all the building blocks of this particular screen. I see those buttons that we added before, some that are just from my Figma file, and it'll even show me if ones are connected to code too. Great, so that's surfacing all the components on your screen. Okay. We didn't have time to overview other pieces like Jira, but basically you can attach Jira tickets to sections or screens, and you can navigate to Jira, and you can even filter based on the ticket type too. Just to give you a little sneak peek. I know that we probably didn't answer all of your questions. If you want to continue the conversation or just hang out and chat, we'll be in Discord for the next hour, half hour or so to talk about your workflow and help you out. I'll be in there hanging out. So come on by, talk to me about the different use cases that you have, problems that you're seeing, and me and the Zeplin community can help you out. So yeah, thanks for joining today. It's good to see everybody. Good to see the global community once more. And I'll see you in Discord. Okay, bye.